here has plans to get married sometime in their life or is already married? All right, I'd say it's safe to say that most of us would agree that family is the key component of society. It's the base unit of all communities. And marriage is especially important to this. And we're all social commentators in this regard, that we all are in the culture. We all have a little bit of knowledge about this. And Judah and Nels are already married, and we've done a lot of research about this topic, the history of marriage. And it's changed a lot, even in the past 50 or 100 years. And so today we're going to be looking at the past state of marriage, circa about 1950s. Then we're going to look at the present state of marriage, and then we're going to look at the near future state of marriage, as well as address one possible reason for this difference throughout the generations. So now, let's start with the past.
Marriage in the 1950s was very different from today's ideas of marriage and the customs and traditions of what it meant to be engaged and be married. Margarita Tartakovsky in May 2014 said in her article, "A Glimpse into Marriage Advice from the 1950s, the marriage prescriptions of the 1950s could be summed up in one sentence. It was mainly a woman's job to foster a happy marriage and steer it away from divorce. When people were married in the 1950s, they did not stray away from each other nearly as much as they do today." In the early to mid-1900s, when dating and thinking about marriage, the guy would always go to the parents, mainly the father, if he had any respect for them. These two are going to give you an example of what preparing for a proposal looked like in the mid-1900s.
Mr. Lindgren, Raleigh and I have been going steady for 2 years now, and gee, well, she's swell. We're in love, and I would just really appreciate it if you give me your permission to marry her.
You know what, Judah? I like you as a boy. Let's go over by the gun cabinet and we'll talk this over.
Divorce rates in the 1950s were decently low. Audrey Jones in 2014 said in her article, "Historical Divorce Rates Statistics," the 50s saw a decrease in divorce, and the rate remained relatively static until after 1967, when divorce laws began to change. And in the beginning of the 1950s, the divorce rate was at 26%, which was decently low compared to now. By 1967, the rate went higher, but in between those times, it went down to 21%. Now that I have explained what the proposal, wedding, and divorce rates are or were in the past, Judah will explain how the idea of marriage has evolved.
So according to Hilary Anyaso, a law and social science editor at Northwest University, she wrote the article, "Marriages, Haves and Have-Nots." It was published on their website February 13th, 2014. She stated, "Starting with the various counterculture revolutions of the 1960s, a third model of marriage emerged. This model continued to value love and companionship, but many of the primary functions of marriage at this point were shifting to involve helping the spouses engage in a voyage of self-discovery and personal growth." That's much different from what she was talking about in like the 40s, 50s, where the wife would stay home, watch the kids, make food, tend the house. The husband would go out to work, come home, "Honey, I'm home," throws hat, on the hat rack. So it just started to make that shift in the whole like hippie movement. Good little hippies. When I asked my wife to marry me, well, before I did, I went to her parents and asked them for permission. Now even that is a shift in itself. Instead of going to just the father, like Raleigh had referenced, I sat down with her mom and her dad. That was largely because she wanted me to do that, because it was important to her that I asked her mother as well as her father, because her mother played just as big of a role in her upbringing and birth, of course, and creating her, as her dad did. So Hilary Anyaso also believes that marriage nowadays is more commonly based on love, as opposed to the arranged marriages back in 1800s, and the early 1900s. It evolved into more of a love-based thing, which is where it was based on, like I said, the arranged marriages in the 1800s. Americans nowadays, however, are expecting more out of their marriages, which is putting more of a strain on the marriages themselves and a strain on each other. Out of the quote from Hilary on Yasso, they're looking at a primary function of marriage now is to help the spouses evolve, basically like help them discover who they are. So that's putting a strain on the other spouse, because it's no longer you have that figured out before you get married. Now you're looking for them to help you. Raleigh and Nell is going to do a sketch, which will lead into my next 2 points.
So, we've been in Vegas this week, and all I want is this stupid t-shirt. There's Elvis at the chapel down there. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, I do.
So that was Bruno Mars' "Marry You" single. To me, that explains perfectly like this modern culture and how it's just like, hey, let's just go get married. We're in Vegas, or we've been dating for 6 months. Let's go get married. You know. Sure, there's probably love involved, but I think it leads more to a failure because it's too much spontaneity. It's too much based on emotion at the time, not true love. It's more on the ideal of love. I submit to you that society of smartphones, fast food, and instant gratification, you know, I think people look at marriage as a form of instant gratification as well. That's just my own personal take on this. So in the first verse it says, we're looking for something dumb to do. Hey baby, I think I want to marry you. Alright. So we've gone from arranged marriages to this modern, we've arrived at a modern pop culture shift of spontaneity and looking for something dumb to do, and let's just go get married. And with that, I'll let Nels take over. He'll explain that a little bit more on, if you look for something dumb to do, go get married. He's going to kind of explain what will probably happen.
One of the trends that's been building a lot is people are now simply going to the courthouse to get married. And, well, I didn't do that. I don't think that's very romantic. And according to Paul Cheston and the London Evening Standard in 2013, 80% of marriages that start in the courthouse end in the courthouse in a divorce. So I'm going to let them show us a little courthouse wedding.
We're gathered here today, and by the power of the Federal Circuit Court of Illinois, vested in me, I now pronounce you man and wife. Okay, see it. Here's your marriage papers.
So, if that was really going on, they have a 4 in 5 chance that that same judge is probably going to see them in the next year or two and go through their divorce proceedings. Now, one thing the current generation is starting to alter is people are getting married later in their life, and that's leading to these types of relationships being more stable, but overall as a whole, the current generation is driving up the divorce rate. This happened, well, part of with divorce too. Another Paul Cheston in the London Evening Standard, one of his theories for why divorce is somewhat tapered off currently is in our current economy, people are financially interdependent. So the only reason they're staying together is because if they divorce, they're going to go live in their parents' basement, and nobody wants to do that. Now, looking at marriage, we've gone over 2 of the models, and there's a 3rd model approaching, but these 3, according to Richard Reeves in his 2014 article, How to Save Marriage in America, we have 3 models that are currently in existence. We have the traditional model, which is, as they were saying, yep, a man is a breadwinner, a woman is a child raiser, man goes, does man work, comes home, the woman does everything at the house, and that's the traditional model. Well, that model's dying. Pretty much the only reason it still exists are baby boomers and people from that generation who are still sticking to the traditional model of marriage. Now, the model that's building today is romantic marriage. The problem with romantic marriage is people get married because they think they're in love and they're all emotional, and then these emotions get messy, and rather than deal with them, they simply divorce and move on. Another problem with that is every time you divorce, you increase your chances of divorcing again, because once you've done it once, there's no reason not to do it again. Now, the third model that's starting to trend currently is what Richard Reeves called the HIP model. Now, what this is what I was referring to with people marrying older. People are actually having established careers, they have education, they're both established as income earners and as partners rather than any sort of superior and not. So in this, both parents are earning, both parents are raising the kids, both parents are splitting all the work, and this is leading to more successful marriages for those that participate in it. Another thing with that model is flexible. Like, my wife is pregnant, so we're going to go to the traditional model for a couple of years while the baby's growing up, and then we'll both go back and we'll be partners and we'll earn together again. So that is the HIP model of marriage, and now I'm going to pass it off to Jonathan to explain how marriage has evolved as a social institution.
All right, as you heard, there have been a lot of changes over the years, and what I'm going to look at is a short reason why it might have changed like this. We observed that there's a strange correlative thing that goes on between, strangely, government policy and marriage changes in the marriage model. Around the 1960s, there was Lyndon B. Johnson's Great Society, which increased, according to Hans Hermann Hoppe, in his 2001 book, Democracy, the God That Failed, he just congealed a massive amount of information, but just one of those statistics was that single motherhood doubled after Lyndon B. Johnson's Great Society. Another indication of government influence on this social institution is in Sweden. Everybody thinks Sweden is, the model welfare state. And in this 1990s book-length study by Alison Carlson on Sweden, called The Swedish Experiment in Family Politics, she found that, insanely, marriage rates have fallen completely. And in addition, there were like 2/3 people in Stockholm are living by themselves, and they're not married, and the vast majority of children are born out of wedlock. And now that we've gone over a possible reason for this, government influence, we're going to conclude. So we've taken a look at the past of marriage, the present models of marriage, and then what will likely happen in the near future with marriage. In addition to that, we discussed one of the most likely reasons as to why marriage is changing in this fashion. And we hope you have gained some understanding of how marriage has evolved in the 20th century until now.